Welcome everyone to EIPIP Meeting 60. We have pretty packed agenda this time. Before we get into the usual discussion, the first item, actually the item number 0 here is about the Travis CI issue. As we know that there is an ongoing issue that was reported yesterday by Micah, and we have communicated it to team, the Ethereum DevOps team. It was reported that it is fixed, but apparently it wasn't. I know PandaP created a pull request, which is kind of related. So anyone from here may would like to provide a summary and where we are on the resolution.
So I think that the GitHub Actions is in fact working perfectly. The problem is, for some reason, I'm pretty sure that Travis CI is still trying to include itself as a required check. And I think that probably has to be fixed by someone with admin access for the repository.
Oh, that's good, because when I was interacting with the team, they reported to me something similar to that. And their last response was, it looks like when it canceled, someone was removed. That needs to be re-added. So if I understand correctly, it was Travis that was accidentally removed when you were trying to fix the issue. Sorry, the question is for you, PandaP. Oh my God.
Not accidentally
Anyway.
removed. It was removed intentionally. And
okay.
Why do you think that it's still being required? Like, I'm looking at a PR here, and I don't see Travis in the required checks list.
Well, I'm looking at this PR right here that I recently made, and Travis is in fact in the required checks.
5241. I don't see Travis in that required checklist. See the auto merge, continuous integration, rerun bot, auto merge bot, continuous integration, continuous integration.
I see it in there.
Yeah.
Did you scroll down?
Well. Yeah.
Did you use the scroller?
Oh, why is there a scroll bar there? Oh my God.
That's cursed UI.
That's terrible. Okay, let me see if I can remove it then. Why would you put a scroll
Yeah,
bar
I
there?
can't find somewhere in the admin panel to remove it, but if somebody knows where that would be.
It'd probably be in the Travis CI interface, not the actual GitHub interface.
Really?
No,
I don't know. It feels like
it's in the webhooks. So if you go to webhooks, you can see notify Travis CI. I think that is how it is finding that there is a Travis CI connection. Like, that's how GitHub is noticing that Travis CI is watching. And so if you remove that webhook, I think that it will stop asking Travis, are there anything pending queries for this? Is my guess.
It might also be in the connections of Ethereum, but I'm not sure about that.
I deactivated it, so we'll see.
You removed it from the webhooks?
I didn't remove it yet. I just deactivated it.
I don't see that as an option. I only see delete.
At the now it's gone.
Did you think that the word delete was deactivate?
No. It definitely, it was like there was a checkbox at the bottom, active, and I unchecked it. And so then I called it deactivate, even though it didn't say deactivate.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's gone now. So good job.
Wait, did you delete it?
No, I was about to, and then it's already gone. I was like, oh,
I didn't
guess
delete
Matt
it
got
either.
booted for me.
Perhaps it would be better to just delete it.
I mean, it is now. Intentionally or not, it's gone. So let me.
All right, go refresh the pages.
Okay, I'm kicking this 5242. See if this still asks for Travis. Still shows as required.
Well, commit
So
has to
something
be
else.
pushed before it rechecks.
Okay, well, we can figure this out. I think assuming the GitHub Actions work properly, I don't think we need to fix Travis. Like, we should just get rid of it. And so we just need to figure out how to actually get rid of Travis. And then we can just iterate on the GitHub Actions if there's problems with it.
So would there be anything required for DevOps team to maybe look into it, or is it something that can be done by the admin access that we have within the team?
I think we're okay dealing with it for now.
Sounds good. Thank you. So moving on to the first item listed here for today's discussion, that is regarding old EIPs that don't conform to the current standards. Basically, this is related to a new linting bot, which is under progress. There are some comments that is added in the link provided in the agenda. So Sam Wilson, if you may like to maybe talk about the new bot and the proposed approaches for automatic validation here.
Yeah, sure. So it's covers everything that EIPV does, but it has better line reporting information and a few other checks. I'm just finishing up like a GitHub action for it, and we should be able to get rid of EIPV and add this instead. Yeah, that's about it.
So I see there are 3 proposals for handling this. I wonder if anyone has any specific.
About like
yeah.
yeah, we're going with the files that changed in a particular PR. That's the easiest. Well, it's not the easiest, but it's not too bad to implement, and that's I think what Micah wanted. So it works out.
Awesome, thank you. We are moving pretty fast on items today so far. Okay, moving on to the item number 2. Oh yeah, please, anyone.
I think I fixed it. It was under branch protection. It still had a reference to Travis CI. And so I have removed Travis CI and I have added EIP validator, HTML proofer, and code spell as required checks for the branch merging.
Yay, thank you.
Hopefully that will do it.
Editors teamwork worked here. Thank you all EIP editors. All right, moving to item number 2, that is about moving proposals in absence of author. This is a known issue that sometimes authors are not around to push the proposal. We created the stagnant bot to mark them as a stagnant and wait for the author to come back if they would like to pursue with that particular proposal. However, in some cases, there are new people who are interested to pursue that proposal. They reached us on ECH Discord to learn about the process as how they can be added to the proposal and champion the proposal. Micah responded to that. That was good. I believe it is helpful too for a few authors to be added. But I have a follow-up question on that, actually 2. Number 1, assuming that the proposal is in stagnant status, how can we make sure that the original proposal may never come alive or move forward as we proceed with an alternate one? And the other part of it is like, if the proposal isn't in stagnant and the author is still not around to respond, what solution do we have? Instead of waiting for the proposal to be eventually marked as a stagnant, for a new champion to maybe take over the proposal.
So are you saying if the author of a stagnant EIP wants to permanently terminate it, how do they do that? Is that what you're asking for the first question?
Oh, no, I'm
Withdraw
sorry.
it.
No, I'm sorry. That is not my question. Let me try to rephrase it. If there is a proposal which is in stagnant status, but an author of another proposal who is using this first proposal as requires for his new proposal wants to pursue the old proposal, bring it out of a stagnant, and they're not getting any response. One solution that was suggested was create a new proposal. It is fine. But how do we make sure that the proposal which was left in stagnant is never moved ahead?
You can't.
No, we don't. Like if two people want to do compete on what is functionally the same proposal they can. Historically, we haven't found that to be a problem. Like people tend to want to collaborate, and so I'm not too worried about this. But if like you had one person that couldn't reach to the original author, and so they decided to spin up a copy and push that forward through, and they're now the author, that's totally fine. But then if later, like a year later or something, the other guy comes back and wants to push his stagnant through, we'll let him. The editors almost certainly will tell him, hey, someone else is already pursuing this, maybe you should work with them. And again, historically, we've always gotten people to work together. And so I'm not too worried about the situation. But theoretically, if they wanted, they could run that proposal totally separate. And even if they're identical, we allow it, presumably, just as a matter of process. But again, I would strongly encourage anyone in that situation to work together rather than separate.
That is a good resolution probably for the stagnant status. Yeah, Victor, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I've seen some of the stagnant proposal were actually already implemented and widely adopted. And for example, like some of the ones that was proposed by Open Zeppelin, I'm curious, like for the editor group on thoughts on this type of stagnant draft. It's basically the original author created an ERC proposal and then also use it in some of their own tools and now get widely adopted. They might not have time to finalize it, but it was kind of de facto standard. Like what is your guidance on these?
So we've had this come up a number of times in the past, and what I usually tell people is you have a few options. One, if you don't have the time to update it, but someone else does, then you can just add them as an author. And all you have to do in that case is just a single approval. So let's say you have person A has created an EIP and it goes to stagnant, and person B would like to see that go to final. So there's someone out there. Person B can submit a PR that moves it out of stagnant and adds themselves as an author. And then the original author, person A, can then just approve that. And then from then on, person B can take the proposal all the way through to final. And so that's one option. And that's the one I generally recommend. Like if you've got that situation where an author doesn't have time or doesn't care to push it through, but someone else does, I generally encourage that one because it's the smoothest and cleanest path forward. The other option is as mentioned before, you can spin up a competing proposal that's basically identical, but actually where the only change is the author, and then push that one through. Again, it's much better if you can just get the original author to sign off on adding you as a co-author, and then you push it through. But if they just absolutely can't be reached, which happens sometimes, people like disappear entirely from the world, it seems. In that situation, then yeah, you'd have to spin up a competing proposal and push it through.
There is one particular situation. There is this one particular situation which is similar to what Victor was trying to explain here, except the case here is the proposal is not in stagnant, though it should have been because it is very old proposal, but we tried to reach out to author in between and he made certain efforts to maybe push, but he again stopped. And then now there is another proposal 2400, which is being discussed in URI meeting, and we are recommending the author to maybe push that proposal because that seems to be a very good proposal, which is actually helpful for many wallet developers, but he is stuck because one EIP 831, which is not in stagnant, is in draft status and author is not approachable. So what is the solution?
So the solution, if you can't get a hold of the author, would be to spin up a new EIP and then depend on that one and push that one through to final. So so basically you'd say, hey, I like this idea, but again, the thing to keep in mind is like from a process standpoint, EIPs that are in draft or stagnant or whatever are basically ideas. They're maybe good ideas and they're on track to eventually become like an actual adopted standard. But until they make it to final, they're not standards yet. They're just ideas or drafts, as you will. Like someone's working on something to try to standardize it. But because they're mutable, they're not really good for being standards. You want something that's immutable to be a standard. You don't want your standard changing every 6 months when an author happens to show up and edit things. And so for that reason, the right thing to do here is if you're depending on something that is draft and it's just not moving forward whatsoever, and you can't get a hold of the author, you can't convince them to add you as a co-author, you can't get them to update it, you can't get them to push it through, then basically copy the EIP, give it a new number, or we'll assign a new number, I should say, and then add yourself as the author instead of the old one. And then you can push that through to final, and then you can depend on that. And so now you have something that's actually mutable that you're depending on rather than depending on something that's mutable.
One concern that he flagged here is it is highly likely that there could be many other proposals who may have used proposal 831 in its current format.
Yeah, people do bad things on the internet all the time. We can't stop them. People did this with the ERC20 and it was a mess. People started implementing ERC20 when it was in draft. And then what ended up happening is ERC20 eventually did get moved to final, but because everybody had implemented it before while it was still in draft phase, it ended up with a bunch of problems that everybody who was working on it acknowledged, hey, these are all really big problems. We should not do this. This is a bad design. But because everybody went out and adopted it while it was still in the draft phase, we ended up, just for compatibility reasons, finalizing it as in its bad form. And now we're stuck with terrible ERC20 tokens everywhere. And it sucks. And in a perfect world, people will wait to adopt standards until they're actually immutable and discussed and people have worked through the issues. They won't be like, hey, that's a good idea that someone just had. Let me go implement my entire system on top of it. They will stop, think through, talk about it, discuss, iterate, and then eventually build systems on top of it. Of course, we don't live in a perfect world of rainbows and ponies. And so sometimes, in this situation, if you've got a bunch of people implementing this thing, even if it's not a good idea, as design, it has design flaws, sometimes it is necessary to push it through with those design flaws. And in this case, you could do that as a separate EIP. So you can just, again, copy the EIP, new EIP number, new author, push it through to final with all of its warts and bugs and everything like that, just so you're backwards compatible with everybody who implemented the earlier version. It sucks. I'm not a fan of it, but it's sometimes necessary. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for you there.
I'm also wondering if it might be good to, if an EIP is stagnant for a certain period of time, say the arbitrary 6 months chosen earlier, if other people might be able to add themselves, if we might be able to make a kind of a pathway for people to add themselves as an author and then kind of adopt that EIP.
Yeah, we talked about this back when we talked about making stagnant a thing. I think the general concern is we're really loath to take over someone else's thing, kind of without their permission, which is why we won't add authors against the authors without permission from the author. And because sometimes there are EIPs that someone will write up a draft for and they'll sit on for 6 months and they'll come back and work on it. In fact, I think Greg here has a couple of EIPs that went stagnant for a while and then he came back and worked on them. And I'm very hesitant to tell people, hey, you have 6 months to get this done or iterate, or we're taking it from you. I'd rather just say, hey, this is your thing. You can work on it. Take your time, whatever speed that is. And for some people that's slow, some people that's very fast. And if someone wants to try to race you, they can do a competing EIP, but they can't take yours. And so I'm hesitant. I'm not hardcore against it. If everyone else here says, yes, we should definitely allow people to take over EIPs after some time period, I probably won't die on this hill. Just my personal thoughts.
How about, for example, maybe something that an author can add that says, if for some reason I lose interest in this and just let it go to stagnant, then other people may decide to add themselves as an author.
So that's just putting Tim as an author. I think that's the standard.
How many times has this actually happened? Really, how many times has this actually happened?
At least one I can remember where Tim was added as an author.
Only one. So we deal with it case by case. The Creative Commons license is so loose that, there's nothing enforceable there. It's just etiquette. Generally, it's you add yourself as an author and you keep going. And if the champion doesn't like it, like McCaw says, or you copy huge bits of it and start over. I don't.
I think the thing that is desired sometimes by people is they want the number. So if you have like EIP 123 and then it goes stagnant, but it becomes well known EIP 123, people
Right.
don't want to then do copy of EIP 123, which is now EIP 7032, and then work on that. They want to iterate on EIP 123 because that's well known and everybody is familiar with it. And that's the one
Also,
that I'm uncomfortable.
It's
think
a
it's also-
Creative Commons license. It's a Creative Commons license. I don't know. It's
Yeah, so
But-
the content, I agree with you entirely, Greg, that someone can just
But-
copy the content and start to EIP. The
yeah.
question is can you take over that specific EIP number from
No,
someone who
you shouldn't take over the number. You're a new champion. You've taken over, but it's going to involve in the champion's new direction. So it's totally appropriate it gets a new number. And your desire to keep the old number is, tough. But the odds are, nobody wants my proposal. They've taken the ideas and thrown them into new proposals. It's, I've got a PR to take a few paragraphs and ideas out of 615 and put it into the new proposal, and we may or may not do that. It's people cooperate on this stuff. It's just we're worrying way too much and stuff that is not likely to happen, and we can deal with when it happens. It's we waste too much time creating procedures for things that may never happen anyway.
I may disagree a little bit here because I think we have created a lot of new process, and it turned out to be helpful for managing it. But again, this is something that we will keep coming up with new challenges and that we would like to discuss. Anyway, I see Victor, do you want to add something here?
Yeah, I want to say that I feel very warm and careful as a like EIP author, seeing this whole group of editors being very kind not to take people's EIP numbers, and trying to be nice and not like enforce like enforcing things over people's will. But as a EIP author, I've sometimes come to the situation where like I might be busy in the future, I might not even be connected in some way. Let's say a car hit me, and I wonder if we can have a middle ground. Let's say find a checkbox in the template to begin with, saying like if I'm inactive on this EIP for longer than 6 months or a year, then you don't have to add the editor as the author, but like I'm giving editors the approval to allow other people to step up if they show sufficient significant interest. I wonder if that's something you want to consider.
I think the joke someone made earlier about making Tim a co-author is something along those lines actually does work. And so in the past, for example, Peter from the guest team had some EIPs he had authored, but he was frustrated with the EIP process and didn't want to push through to final. And so all he did was approved a PR to add Tim as a co-author, and then Tim took everything through to final. And so one can imagine kind of if we wanted to formalize that, I'm not suggesting we do formalize it, but if we wanted to formalize that, we could have, some placeholder author that is used to indicate that, like maybe one of the editors or several of the editors, like if you put down, Sam, Matt, and Micah on as co-authors, then it's kind of a signal in some way, or maybe you put down a certain bot or something name, just as a signal to say, I'm okay if someone else takes this over. Like, and in fact, I have some EIPs like this where I have them in stagnant. I would love it if someone takes them over. In fact, I actively advocate. Yes, we should standardize Tim in EIP1. In fact, some of my stagnant EIPs, I actively advocate in multiple forums and whatnot. Please, someone take this over. And so being able to have that apply even after I'm hit by a car would be nice. And so I don't need to actually be around to approve whoever does decide to take over. Yeah, I'm in favor of the idea. I don't have any problem with the idea. How to integrate that into our process, I'm a little less clear of. I think best I can think of is having some sort of placeholder author that's kind of well known as if this author is in your author line, it means that if your EIP goes stagnant, someone can take it over and you're okay with it.
We don't need a dead author policy. That's a horrible tragedy that we'll deal with when the time comes. Hope it doesn't ever come.
Well, so the problem is we don't know if the author's dead or just taking a hiatus or on vacation.
We're just, we'll deal with it when it happens. But it's best that we just set a new number. If we really can't find the author, if we can't find the author or have reason to believe the author's potentially going to, just don't take the author's number without permission unless we know the author's gone, and in some consensus just go, John's going to take it over and we'll keep the same number. That's what the dead person would have wanted. Whatever, we'll deal with the tragedy when it happens.
Right. So
hope it never does.
We have, so for all we know, this tragedy may have happened several times. There are many EIPs that have authors that have disappeared off the face of the planet. And I don't know where they're at. They're possibly dead, and it's very possible they would have liked someone to take over their thing after they're gone. And that's what Victor is suggesting.
Nobody is bound to this decision later anyway. We could write this down, but when it happens, people are going to do what seems best in the situation. We don't need a policy for these things.
So how do you propose we handle all of the stagnant EIPs that people would like to take over right now, where we have no ability to get in contact with the author? They might be dead. We don't know. We don't have a way for the authors to pre-die.
How many of those do we have?
We've got a handful. I'd say less than a dozen maybe, but that order of magnitude. So
Okay, that's a lot. How many are ERCs? How many are core?
I think mostly ERCs. There are a couple of core EIPs, I think, that have disappeared, but I think those ones have been since handled, past the ideas.
Cores are more delicate. I just don't. We need to work with those particular people. We don't need to chat with each other about a general policy. We really need, it's work, but we need to work with the people to come up with the best resolution for each situation. But I would say the general preference is, add yourself as an author to a new EIP. I think the precedent's long been set that other than the primary author, other people are simply being acknowledged for their contribution. They may or may not still support the EIP. In some cases, they oppose the EIP but don't want to have their name removed. So just take it over and give it a new number. And if that creates some confusion, we can deal with it. That's a preference. We can go against a preference if we think it's best. It's just.
So how do you propose we deal with the situation Victor is saying, where he's got an EIP and he wants to make it clear that if he disappears, he would like someone else to be able to take over that EIP specifically? How should we, record this or track this or make note of it?
He can put it in his last will and testament.
Or we could stick it in the preamble.
Or we can just
tell his lawyer, please reach out to the EIP editors and make a claim that and we validate that certificate. That sounds like absolute.
It went into the notes of this meeting and we archived the notes. So I don't see a problem.
So, yes, what you just described would work. I feel like if that's our process, I'm fine with that. It feels like the process would be simpler if we just had a placeholder author that the person could put in, rather than requiring the person show up at the EIP meeting and bring it up and,
no, I'm just saying,
who am I on GitHub, stuff
like. When a person asks, we say, have you tried hard to find the author? And if the answer is yes, and there can't be a hard and fast rule there. It's always an option to just take a proposal add yourself as author under a new number. That's the preferred option if you can't find the author. And if the author doesn't want, if the new author doesn't want to do it for some reason, we consider those reasons. I don't think there's many cases of that, or many reasons. It can't just be rejected out of hand.
So I think one thing you could do, Victor, to bypass this whole debate that Greg and I are having would be add several other people. And as long as you guys aren't all on the same plane at the same time when it crashes, someone will still be around to approve someone else taking it over. And you can add, some people that will support a future takeover if you disappear. That way we don't need new processes. And, if something happens to you, you've got several other authors that can accept a replacement.
Generally, you're lucky if anybody wants to champion it.
I have a bunch of EIPs that I wish someone would champion.
I can chime in here. I think to answer Tim's question, why not just make copy of it? I feel like for and just speaking of myself or whoever cares about the content of the EIP more than the glorious number, I think authors can care more about can be less caring about someone else taking the number rather than people just make a copy and claim themselves as a author, even though that CC0 definitely is not restricting that and they know that, but authors I think care about their work being used or not. So in respecting that, I think it's slightly better from me as a personal feeling that if I can just sign off and say, hey, I'm okay someone take off, and then, but I also wonder if it's a good idea to just put some random editor as a placeholder author, because the title of author actually mean something for people. You guys are all authors yourself as well, right? When you put a author in the subject of the paper, it really means something. So maybe either we can say have a separate a trusted editor or something like that. That has the approval to edit and add or remove authors if they need to, or we can just. I think for me it's simply just like a checkbox that I am signing off for the Ethereum editor group to have someone else take off if they see fit. So I can further pursue this idea by making a PR of a template and the EIP one, and we can. I don't want to hijack too much time of this meeting, which put us as already very packed. But I appreciate you guys all listening to me on this idea.
Yeah. So as far as further discussion, oftentimes just creating a PR against the EIP1 is a good way to incite discussion. So make your proposed change, and then all of the editors will pile on and say whether we don't like it, and then eventually it'll get rejected or approved. This works particularly well if it's a very simple change, like if you just want to add a line to the header or something. The effort there, is very low for you to create that PR, and then it gives us a place to discuss and iterate. So if you're up for it and you want to continue this discussion, I'd say that's probably the next step.
Sounds good. Thank you. And before that, I'll just write it to my personal living will.
Yeah. If a lawyer contacts me and asks me to validate a death certificate and associate it with the GitHub handle, I'll tell them, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it.
Well, actually, GitHub has a process that actually allows you to transfer your account to another GitHub account in case of your death, if you check in your settings.
Oh, okay, yeah, do that, I guess.
Sounds good.
All right. It looks like we had a lot of good discussion plus fun discussion here. I wanted to quickly respond to one point of Greg, which I find a little fair here. Like, we should not allow any other author to take their EIP number once they have submitted and has been merged as draft in the EIP repository, which I think is not going to be a case in any case, because if someone is trying to rewrite the EIP, that would not contain the same history because that is not being merged on the same number. So anyway, they would be getting a new number. So yeah, I think that would resolve the main issue. And otherwise, I believe we have a handful of other solutions to deal with certain situation in here. So I wanted to check on this issue because the author reached out to me, like what would be the next best step. So I'm going to suggest him to maybe come up with their own proposal and try to push that proposal in order to push the original proposal he wanted to move it towards final. And I'm going to ask him to hang out on EIP Editor's channel for any question, concern, and any roadblocker if he finds on the way. Well, thank you for this discussion. Moving on to the next item listed here on the agenda, that is about the future of EIP process after the merge. So in the past few meetings, we discussed about the core EIP process, which we may expect after the merge. And I was talking to Anat, who is currently leading the NFT working group. And she is also looking into some of the ERCs related to NFT, and she is concerned about the process. So Anat, I would like you to maybe share about your thoughts, concern on this topic, and then we can probably discuss how do we see it.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me a word. So regarding the EIP template, I just shared to the agenda document, the HackMD document, which I discussed with Greg on like how we should do, like what kind of template we should have for Magician's Forum in order so people can share EIPs to forum, but without copy pasting the full EIPs itself. So my idea is to, I mean, I talked to Greg with this. So it should have like TLDR of the EIP itself, EIP motivation and specification, and additional links to any sources or implementation or anything like that. I can paste link here as well. So yeah, so that's the template. So authors will have easier job, or like it should be like easier to share a piece on the forum, and so it can be discussed. And that's pretty much it. I mean, we've been also talking with some people in the NFT standards working group regarding the EIP 4007 or 4907, I think. And there has been many comments regarding that, but I push it to the author so they maybe edit the EIP itself and add more tests in different languages. And I mean, there are like a bunch of links which I can share later on, but that's probably on EIP authors itself, and that's pretty much what I wanted to share. I'm going to share the link with you guys for the HackMD document to the chat.
Thank you. Just to provide some more context here, it was reported to the group that sometimes when we are recommending people to create an issue thread on Fellowship of Ethereum Magician, they are pasting the entire content of EIP. And that's why this is a proposed template, which we are hoping to have it on Fellowship of Ethereum Magician. So they get the guideline of how they should initiate a discussion on that forum and do not end up pasting the entire proposal. So that was on it. Coming back to the point that we were trying to bring it here about the EIP process. My general understanding is the EIP process after the merge will not be affected for ERC or any other category of proposals other than the core EIP, which we will be probably discussing in this meeting today, or if we get time. Yeah, any other different part? Do we see any changes coming up for ERC category proposal in future, considering the present proposals that we have on table?
I like
I have a-
seeing the whole EIP pasted in, if that's what they want to do, if that's what's ready.
So I have no problem with creating a template for over on the FEM forums that contains some standardized thing just to help people along. I generally am okay with people doing what they want for their post. If they already have a draft EIP, then I do weakly prefer that they don't just paste in the whole EIP, because then it ends up out of sync with the EIP itself over time. And I'd rather than paste a link to the EIP.
Oh.
But if they are starting with no EIP and they just have an idea and they want to iterate, then I think, like Greg said, a full EIP is fine, or a partial EIP I would also be okay with. Pretty much anything. So I'll basically, my stance is if you guys think this would be useful, I have no problem with it.
I think the strong advice is make it clear to initiate discussion with, but a template or just examples, whatever. But yeah, it's up to the author, and we have enough to do without policing the authors.
Have we verified that Discourse does support templated topics? Like, can we actually create a template that integrates with Discourse?
That was going to be my next question. Yes. So
we should find that out.
Yeah.
Like having a template that is just like a file somewhere. My concern would just be that no one would look at it. Like we already have this problem with EIP 1, right? No one actually looks at EIP 1. They generally just copy another EIP. And so if they happen to copy an old EIP that doesn't match the current format, then they use that. If they copy a new EIP, they use that. If FEM or Discourse supports, like when you click the new button, it asks you, hey, do you want to use this template? Then people might actually use it, and it's probably it might be worth the effort to give authors like a hint, hey, this is a good template to use, we give it a try. Whereas if we can't actually do that, then I would be hesitant to spend time, designing and polishing a template if no one ends up using it.
Isn't that what the EIP template in the root of the EIP's repository is supposed to be?
It is, and no one uses it, except for, I think, me. I think I'm the only person that actually creates their EIPs from that template. And that's exactly the problem, right? Is that if it's not part of the new PR flow, then people won't. What was that, Kevin?
Well, I use it too.
Okay, so there's two of us that use it.
I think it's from an author perspective, most authors only have one or two proposals, like a majority of them, rather than them being very familiar with the process. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so maybe using Lintool or the Travis, which you discussed just now, to help guide people so that they can automatically be reminded of using them or make sure they conform.
All right. Yeah, please go ahead, Greg.
That comes at the stage where you're actually creating the draft. This is the stage where you're just starting a discussion on the magicians. I like to offer help to people, but I want to make it easy to start things there. I don't want to discourage it at all.
Yeah, agreed. If I had to imagine my ideal scenario, it would be when you're on the Discourse forums, you click new, and it asks you, like, one of the first things it asks you is like what topic you want to do, and so you choose EIP discussion. And then when you chose the EIP discussion, again, this is ideal world, I don't think this is possible. When you chose that, I would say, hey, would you like to use this template or would you like to freeform? And the user can choose, the author can choose to freeform if they want, or they can choose to use the template and they'd fill it out and give them some hints and say, hey, here's some useful things for a new EIP idea. But like Greg said, I definitely want to encourage and make it easy for people. And I don't want to take away their power to do freeform stuff either.
So you click new, a very simple bit of markdown gets dropped in, like, you know, here's the summary and put in something else afterwards. And if they don't like it, they delete it and keep going.
Yeah, I'd be totally fine with that.
You know, just some markdown with some advice in between. Just as simple as possible, but useful. It's so easy to just delete it. And easy enough to tell them that they have every right to delete it. I don't know. It's just, we're making this too hard.
Yeah, if that's possible, I'd be. So I think next steps is someone find out, can we add a template to, like Greg described, you know, where you, when you click new, it pre-fills some stuff that you can just quickly delete if you don't like it. If that's possible, then someone can iterate on that. If that's not possible, then just keep in mind, like, I don't want to say, so Gavin says it is possible. So whoever wants to take that, I have no problem.
So if you,
it can even, slow down, I'm sorry. It can even drop in a link to EIP1. Please read this.
Is there not already one?
I think there's currently no template in on the forum. It's like when you go to new forum topic, it's just a blank slate.
So we are actually just suggesting go to Fellowship of Ethereum Magician. Maybe we can update that link directly leading to the template where it suggests how to probably write it, the first draft. Well, that's good.
So we need a,
yeah.
So we want a button that says new EIP, and it opens up the topic with some minimal instructions and fill in the blanks, and the author can take it from there. And this will encourage them to go read EIP1 and use the template if they haven't already. I like that.
Yeah, I hope that is going to be very helpful. All right, we have just 10 minutes left. I see a lot of issues there. I mean, like the topics to be covered. Let me try to bring some of them quickly. Number 4 from GitHub issue. This is about some conflict. Include a copy of RFC 822 and RFC 2119. I have added the issue link here. Probably there are some discussion, I guess, initiated by Panda Peep, or Micah, anyone?
I have no problem.
Sorry, I didn't catch which one the issue was. Oh, is this including the RFCs? Well, I obviously don't have any issue with it.
Yeah, that one.
So I'm in favor of adding 2119. I'm not sure if we're allowed to add the other one.
What is the other one, and why would we not be? Does it have different licensing?
Yeah, so 2119 explicitly says distribution of this memo is unlimited, which according to their FAQ means that you can just redistribute it however you want. Whereas the other one, I think, was 822 or something like that, doesn't include that note. So they don't give legal guidance on whether we're allowed to redistribute it or not.
I interpret don't give legal guidance as do whatever you want, but I don't know what the rest of you do. If no one tells me explicitly I can't do it, I'm going to do it.
Also, worst case, they tell us take it down and we take it down.
Very true. Yeah.
So I'm okay with approving that PR if no one else feels comfortable approving that PR. But also, so if someone created this PR, I would have no problem approving it as long as no one rejected it. If someone actively rejects it, then I will respect that in further discussion.
Do we put them in the assets directory for EIP1 or do they go somewhere else?
Assets directory for EIP1 would be what
yeah, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Cool. Point number B here is for EIP 4907 that has inconsistencies which requires EIP 721. So here is the thing in the proposal 4907 that has been moved to final. It suggests that it requires EIP 721 as mandatory, but the proposal has some inconsistencies with the required proposal 721. I'm dropping the link to the proposal here.
Does anyone know the technical history behind this?
So from what I gather, the thing that's similar to the owner of in EIP 721, in EIP 721, owner of, if token ID doesn't exist, then it reverts. But in this EIP 4907, the equivalent for the effective user does not actually revert, it just returns the 0 address instead. And basically, it'd be nice if they both reverted.
Sure, but so if there's
but it's
just
also final.
Yeah, so if it's final and like having final EIPs that suck is pretty normal. And we have pretty strict policy that, you know, if your specification is final, you cannot change the specification. Like, my general way to phrase this is, if someone implemented the EIP before the change, it must still be completely compliant after the change. Like, you cannot have any possible implementation that becomes non-compliant due to this change. And if I understand correctly, this change would make something that was previously compliant now non-compliant. So therefore, they'd need a new EIP.
Yeah, I just suggest sticking a new EIP with that change in. Perhaps it could, I'd say it'd probably be able to be merged in this review. I'm not sure if it'd be allowed to be merged in this last call. That might be a bit too ambitious, but I wouldn't be entirely opposed to that.
I generally prefer people go through the process, draft, review, last call, final, though I also don't care how fast they go through that process. The main reason is I just, having to go through those steps, there are some people that only pay attention on certain steps, and so you skip a step, you skip a set of people that pay attention. Like, for example, for ERCs, I will glance once at an ERC when it's in draft, and I will glance once when it goes into last call, and I ignore everything else. And so if you skip one or more steps, then I will not see it. And so I like to at least go through the process, but again, it can be quick. Like, you can just submit it as a draft, get it merged, immediately submit to review as soon as that's merged, merge it, immediately submit it as last call, merge it, and then wait for 2 weeks and submit to final. Like, I don't expect anyone to take a certain amount of time besides the last call step.
I would agree. That is generally a good practice here, to start from draft and move it fast if that proposal is in good shape and people are accepting it the way it is. Probably I can add that as a comment. So if the user who has suggested this change or has pointed it out, maybe want to create a new proposal. Point number C, 4C here is reference implementation aren't linted prior check-in when marked as final. I see this is by a user Tim Top, and I have seen some comment left by EIPIP. Anyone would like to summarize, or is there any final decision on this issue?
So I think it's still very much debatable. I would say that they should be all CC0 unless there is a good reason for them not to be. For example, the RFCs, obviously we can't stick as CC0. But I'd also suggest maybe having to have editor approval to have something that is non-CC0.
I see point number 5, which is also on a similar note, that is license for a reference implementation discussion.
So on this 157, issue. There's two separate things. One is, should we require everything to be a certain license or not? And two, should we lint people's code? I'm pretty against linting people's code because I want authors to have autonomy to write their code how they want. And if you want to do curly braces on next line with, vertical alignment and using spaces, then that's your choice. And I don't want to try to enforce on anyone else any particular. This is mainly because I don't want editors to be taking philosophical positions on things, if at all possible. So that's the one thing. I'm fairly against that one. The licensing one is more separate and more complicated. We do need to resolve that because right now we don't have consistency, and we should decide, what licenses are people allowed to include as part of their EIP. I'm pretty strongly in favor of everything should be CC0. Like the EIP is CC0, and that means everything the EIP, you can't get out of the CC0 license by just moving all your content over to an assets file. Like, I think that's not an appropriate way to bypass the CC0 licensing. But I know not everybody agrees with me on this, and so I do think we need more discussion.
Yeah, I think the other side of it is, I think we should allow other licenses in the assets directory. Like CC0 isn't even an OSI approved license, so.
Yeah, it's because OSI is dumb.
They have a pretty good reason for it, I think. It explicitly does not grant patents where, the unlicensed or some of the other CC0-esque licenses do. Yeah.
Sure, but neither does MIT, and I believe MIT is.
No, exactly. Yeah, so MIT doesn't mention patents at all, whereas CC0 explicitly does not grant patents, and they were concerned about that.
Why would we want people to have patents over EIPs?
We don't.
No, it means that you can get patent. The fear is patent trolls. So someone comes in, license something to CC0, but it includes patent infringing code. And then someone else will then use that code because it's CC0 licensed. And then the patent troll will come show up and sue the person for using their patented stuff. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And the fact that this is an issue in the world makes me want to fast forward my plans to murder all of humanity.
Yeah, so anyways, like, I just think we should allow other licenses than CC0. I'm totally fine with, like, the default being CC0 only, and if somebody wants something else, like, somebody has to approve it anyways, but yeah.
Can we have like CC people have like in Wikipedia the content license is CC by SHA, and you can license it with other license. So people can cite your content with either one. Can we make CC by as one required license? And then if they want to license it in any other ways, they can declare that we also license it under other forms. So if if you worry about patent, we happen to also license it with this license, so you can use it. How's that?
I would be okay with that. I don't think that addresses the problem that people have. I think the problem people have is they want to include in their assets directory code that is already code that someone else wrote that they are copying as part of their EIP. Usually it's OpenZeppelin. So OpenZeppelin, I think, licenses everything they do is MIT. And so they want to copy that MIT code, drop it in the assets directory, and then use it in their reference implementation. But they can't relicense that as CC0 because they don't have the rights to do so.
For this specific case, I think it's impossible to avoid it. That right? People can always propose something and then put it there, even though it can be put assumingly infringing other people's patent who don't necessarily are the author, right? Who might not be.
People can definitely lie, and we just assume that everybody's telling the truth in this case because that gives us legal protection. I think is the general idea. Like if someone steals someone else's code, puts it in a GitHub repository, then a patent troll comes around. Generally, the person who put it there is the person who's in trouble. And as long as if they claimed that this is non-patented, but that's not true, then they're the ones that are in trouble. And so ultimately, we just need them from a legal standpoint, presumably we need them to make a declaration that this is X, and that's enough. Whether that declaration is true or not doesn't actually matter. We just need them to, effectively make a claim somewhere. And
Yeah. I wonder if that is achieved by a license or not. The thing I'm concerned about is allowing people to use some license that's actually restricted of distribution of the content.
Yeah, and that's why I prefer CC0 only. Like I want everything. Like I want us to, if someone goes and reads an EIP, and that includes all aspects of the EIP, including the specification section, the assets, etc. I want them to be comfortable that they can use that however they want. Like they don't need to worry. The fact that CC0 doesn't give patent protection, yes, that's a concern. And I mean,
We are not lawyers.
well, maybe I am in the past life.
You have, no, I mean, really.
All right. We
Like,
had
yeah.
nice.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
You're entirely right, Greg. Like we only have like a very, very surface level knowledge of any of this stuff. So
I mean, so I've spoken to lawyers on this, and they also only have a surface level knowledge of this stuff. I wouldn't give them too much credit. A big part of the problem is most of these theoretical cases have never actually been tried in court, and so everybody is guessing, including the lawyers. And the lawyers guess, with, presumably history and background and knowledge of precedent and court cases and how courts have decided in the past. But like, there's no actual strong precedent that says most of this stuff. The patent stuff, I think, actually has been tried in court. And so that is concerning. I don't know if anyone's actually patent trolled CC0 before, but people have patent trolled before. Like that is a thing that people have done.
I would just say, I had thought we always did stick with CC0, so it's unfortunate if anything landed in assets otherwise. And if it can't be made CC0, then it should be linked to rather than copied to assets. And then I don't see that a link out to something has anything like the same force as actual inclusion. And but it would be good if the foundation wanted to hire a lawyer, and if anything ever happened, then you just point and say, this lawyer said it was okay. We tried to do the right thing, and that helps. Otherwise, just pick a restrictive policy and be assholes about it and quit worrying.
I'm a fan of being an asshole.
So if I have to maybe put it for the note writers, do we have any consensus on this, or we are still continuing discussion? Okay, then probably I will add it to the next meeting and try to see what more for and against points do we have to consider. Yeah.
I do think there's one thing we can do. Let's split that issue, or suggest to Tim to split that issue into two. So one is the licensing issue, and that is an entire discussion. Separately is, should we lint people's code? And I think those two can be handled in isolation from each other, and they may have very different resolutions.
Is it something that is recommended to be done on EF DevOps channel, or do you want it to be there on EIP channel?
So he has, so right now he has on Ethereum Cat Herders EIPIP, he has an issue number 157 that's linked from the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
Currently that has 2 bullet points. I think this should actually be split into 2 separate issues. The discussions can remain separate.
I'm sorry. For a moment, I forgot that we are talking about the other Tim. I was thinking that you're talking to Tim Beko. My bad. Anyway. Okay, fine. Definitely, I'm going to add this as what we have taken out from this meeting. And if we have 2 separate issues, we can continue discussing on that. Well, we are past 6 minutes from the meeting, and there were many other points that we wanted to discuss. I hope to bring them up in the next meeting. Thank you all for joining us today. And yeah, I hope to see you in 2 weeks. But if there are something that we need to be addressing it on higher priority, we can probably bring it to EIP Cat Herders or EIP Editors channel, and we can see if we come to a faster solution over there. Thanks again. See you all in 2 weeks. Have a good one, everyone.
See you.
You too.
Right.